Jesus is described as the Prince of Peace. And what does Jesus say? Peace I leave with you. So the reality is the sins of the nature within our life are strife and discontent and jealousy and envy. And what does Paul say? The gifts of the Spirit is joy and peace. A peace, a calmness in the midst of whatever is taking place in our life. We have that peace and the assurance. And you see, friends, peace is not the absence of conflict, but it's the presence of God within our life during the conflict. Peace is the fact when there's the storm going on and the disciples are on the boat and there's the storm and Jesus is there and he says to the water, "Peace, be still." He says to the disciples, "Why are you afraid? I'm with you. Why are you afraid in the midst of the storm?" For you and I, why are we afraid in the midst of our storms of life? If we have the fruit of the Spirit, we have peace. Paul goes on and says, patience. Patience is an interesting word because it's derived from a few different Greek words. It means long, temper, and endurance. So in other words, it means to have a long endurance within your temper. So it doesn't mean having a short fuse, but it means having a long fuse. Patience, another word for patience is long suffering. It's the ability to receive from other people and to stay calm. It's the ability that Jesus had on the cross when he said, "Father, forgive them. They don't know what they do." It's the ability that Stephen, the first martyr of the church, had as he was being stoned. When he looked to heaven and he said, "Father, forgive them," as he's being stoned. I think most of us would be running from martyrdom. We'd be heading the other way. Stephen faced it square, head on. Millions of our brothers and sisters around the world, Christian brothers and sisters, have faced martyrdom with a patience, with a calmness within their heart. The Apostle Paul says we're called to have love, joy, peace, patience, kindness. Kindness is goodness in action. It's the ability to act for the welfare of those who are taxing your patience. So somebody is really taxing your long suffering, your patience. They're really on your nerves. They grate you. They just drive you crazy. In the midst of them driving you crazy, you're kind to them. Now, kindness doesn't mean being nicey nice. But it means treating them with respect. Treating them with the reality that they are and can be a child of God as we are. Kindness. Goodness. Goodness is to be open-hearted. It's to be generous to others. It's to be generous above and beyond what they deserve. In some respects, it sort of fits into the idea of kindness. The Apostle Paul says in Titus, "Those who have trusted in God may be careful to devote themselves to doing what is good." Faithfulness. I know some of you were really saddened when, I forget his name, the guy on 2.5 Men, Charlie Sheen. I know some people within the congregation just love watching that show, 2.5 Men. I have watched it, I will admit, probably too many times, but you watch that show, there is no faithfulness, there is no redeeming value in that show. None at all. Watch television or watch any movie, and I can't say any, but there are very few and far between movies and television shows that show faithfulness. That show couples, married couples, who are faithful to each other. We live in a society today that faithfulness is something that's been thrown out. The reality is we are called to be faithful to each other. The reality is most of us know the divorce rate within America is average is 50%. There's different percentages for first marriages, second marriages, third marriages, living together before you're married on your first marriage, or if you don't live together before your first marriage. I mean, there's all the different percentages that are out there, but the average is 50%. Faithfulness. The Apostle Paul says here, we are called to have a faithfulness in our lives. When life is difficult and tough, we are then called into a faithfulness. The Apostle John in the book of Revelations 2, calls you and I to be faithful even to the point of death. That's a tough thing to think about within our life. So how do we do that within our life? How are we faithful within our family, our marriage relationship? Paul says we are called to be faithful to God and to each other. Also to gentleness. The word gentleness it's an interesting word because it's the word which means having strength, having power, but having it under control, like the next word. Strength and power, but under control. The idea is a stallion, a horse, a stallion who has strength and power, but is under control by the rider. Sometimes we think of gentleness and meekness as being wimpy, as being a doormat. That's not what this word means. It's not what this fruit means. It means having the ability to stand up for yourself, the ability to stand up for others in a way which is gracious and kind and under control. This morning in the prayer time in my office, Ken McRitchie read from the book of Psalms about, in your anger do not sin. Gentleness. In your anger, when you have that strength, when you have that ability, when you have a reason to in some respects retaliate to somebody else, and you have that strength, don't sin while you are standing up for yourself or for somebody else. You have power under control. Which leads us to the last one, to be self-controlled. Self-control, to be in control of one's own behavior. That our flesh, and what if we go back a few slides, what does it say? That our flesh desires the sin, but the Spirit desires the fruit. Self-control is being able to say no to ourselves and yes to the Spirit of God. No to ourselves and yes to the Spirit of God. A problem that we tend to have, though, within our life is we tend to rather go for the artificial. We tend to rather go, and I think these are, these flowers all look nice. These tulips, I think they're tulips, aren't they? Are these tulips? I think they're tulips. Again, I'm not a flower or garden person. I think they're tulips. They look nice, and they're going to last all year. They're going to last for 100 years. Unless some mice eat them, they're going to be fine, but they're not real. You and I get caught up in what is not real instead of what is real. The Apostle Paul says to us, we are called to bear the fruit of the Spirit. God's purpose for our life, God's purpose for my life, God's purpose for your life is that we bear fruit. That we bear fruit. I planted all those strawberries, expecting to have strawberries for many years to come. I wasted $100. A farmer will go out and plant their seed. I have planted wheat fields before in South Dakota. I used to volunteer and help the farmers out there. I was cheap labor for them. I was free labor for them. So I'd go out and I would plant wheat fields, and the wheat that was planted or the corn that was planted, you take one kernel of corn, and hopefully that one kernel of corn will produce 250 or more kernels of corn on the 1 or 2 or 3 corn cobs that grow on that one stalk. Now, would any farmer go out and plant one kernel of corn expecting one kernel of corn to grow? Wouldn't be worth it, would it? Why would you do it? You expect a growth to take place. Jesus Christ says that His Word goes out and that the Word